Remember, remember, the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Hey guys, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove, and I'm back today with another review, here to take a look at the V for Vendetta, the Deluxe Edition from DC Comics, published under the DC Vertigo imprint. This is a really cool collection, something that I've wanted to take a look at for a little while now, and I'm finally getting around to doing so on the channel here. So we will be taking a look at this book, giving an overview of it, discussing some of the plot points and diving through it to just showcase it in some detail. Before I get to looking at the book itself, let's have a look here at the dust cover. Really like the design here with V on the front. The really nice kind of glossy design of this V logo over the matte background. And that same kind of style goes on the back of the book here. So it's a primarily matte feeling dust jacket. But with a lot of the text here in this kind of glossy red finish, which looks really cool. Hopefully it's coming across pretty well on the camera here. But this is a fun story, so written of course by Alan Moore. I've discussed a few of Alan Moore's works on the channel now in various collected editions. The artwork in here by David Lloyd. And this is certainly an interesting story. It's one that was adapted quite a few years ago now, a long time ago really, it probably seems like, into a movie, which for the most part did a pretty good job, I think, of adapting this. Underneath the dust jacket, let's just take a look at this wraparound design featuring various images from within the story. Pretty cool stuff. And I want to just give a spoiler warning here, so if you're not familiar with the plot of V for Vendetta, I will discuss some of the key plot points. As always, I won't discuss everything in total detail. This is not intended to be a full plot summary that I'll be going through here. But as I look through the book and discuss some of this this stuff in detail, it could be that I spoil something you don't want to know if you've never read through this before and you're not familiar with it. So just fair warning. But this is, yeah, a really interesting story. So this is set in Britain in a kind of alternate reality where a totalitarian regime has taken control of the country in the wake of a kind of nuclear disaster that's, if I remember rightly, meant to have caused untold destruction across the vast majority of Europe, which somehow the UK has mostly survived and escaped the worst of. But as a result of that, this totalitarian regime has taken control and transformed Britain into a dystopian version of itself. So this is quite a political story, you know, something that Alan Moore has rarely shied away from, either in his personal life or in his works, is offering a kind of political commentary within his stories. And this is perhaps the most on the nose of anything that he's done, within any kind of mainstream work anyway, by showing us this far-right regime that takes control of Britain and showing the kind of oppressive way of life that gets enforced upon the country as a result. And in this society, in the wake of all of that, we get this this figure, this mysterious character, V, who emerges and presents himself as the kind of the Guy Fawkes character, you know, the person who is presented here as an anarchist, you know, Alan Moore being a self-described anarchist in the past. And V here being the revolutionary, the guy who wants to take the fight to the powers that be and win back freedom for this country in a very kind of active way, shall we say. It's certainly an interesting story, you know, if you've got any kind of interest in this sort of thing, in this sort of concept of alternate realities, and sort of seeing how political extremes can play out. It's a cool story in that sense. V is a pretty compelling character. He's very mysterious all the way throughout this. You know, he wears the Guy Fawkes mask and hat. We never really see him properly. We don't really learn a whole lot about him, although we do find out a bit about his origin, so to speak. We never learn too much about him, and we never really see his face. The artwork in here by David Lloyd is something I do want to discuss and talk about, because I do not think it would be right to say that it's amongst my favorite artwork, you know, across comics in general. It isn't, but it tends to work really well in this particular story because of the sort of themes and the sort of plot points that we're dealing with as you look through this book and as you read through it. The fact that it is very much a dark story, it's very kind of depressing at points. So, Lloyd offers quite a literally dark art style that kind of mirrors that and matches it. It's very cool. It's quite a disturbing story. It's got some creepy things going on. A lot of characters who are in positions of power within this regime. You've got people in the media, for example, who are involved with censoring everything that's reported within the country, and people in various other kind of government positions, state positions. And they're all, various degrees of corrupt characters. Of course, the point of the story is to be kind of cheering on V and the revolution he's trying to instigate against this regime to bring about the downfall of this extremist government. But it's really quite an interesting read. I suppose it's one of those major Alan Moore works that will often be mentioned amongst key Alan Moore stories, especially with having had that adaptation, which I think that film that which brought it to the attention of many people who perhaps weren't as familiar with the original comic. But I definitely enjoy this. I think that there is, as is often the case, there's more to it within the story here in the comic than there is within the film. But I just wanted to kind of showcase this book. This is something that's still available at the time of recording this, as far as I can tell. I did look it up and found it for sale in a few places. And I just wanted to show it in some detail because it is an interesting story and something I do think is well worth reading. The pages in this particular collection, they are matte pages, so they are not glossy pages, as is the case with, I feel, the majority of collected editions from both DC and Marvel. But they have a very much a matte finish here, which gives them a literally a different feel as you flick through the pages to, a glossy finished page. But there are some great moments in here. V, like I say, a very charismatic, mysterious character. He is something that he's almost a symbol. In fact, there's a great quote within here. I think actually that quote is on the dust jacket. Yes, it actually is in here. A very cool dust jacket design, but I love this. There's no flesh or blood within this cloak to kill. There's only an idea. Ideas are bulletproof. And I absolutely love that. I think that's an absolutely incredible quote. And that's sort of what V is. The whole idea of him, he wears the mask and we don't see him really, not properly, like I say, at any point. And he is just this idea, this kind of anarchist idea that Moore presents. It's very much a mature story. It deals with, there's quite a bit of violence and other mature themes. There's this whole scene here, like I say, I don't really want to spoil things too much, but it takes place within a prison setting, and V adopts this female character. She kind of becomes this sort of apprentice, and he kind of puts her through a pretty rigorous test of faith to see if she would be suitable to really follow in his footsteps and carry out the work that he does. But he starts to succeed against all the odds, and it is genuinely quite satisfying within the story to see this regime start to lose its grip on the people as more and more of the citizens of this version of the UK and Britain start to question whether or not the totalitarian control that's in place is the right thing for the country. The seeds of revolt are sown by V over the course of this story. And ultimately, there is payoff to this. It is something that's well worth reading. And like I say, I wanted to do a relatively quick overview here today. We're just looking through this book to give an idea of what it's like for anybody who's maybe not too sure as to whether it's something they'd be interested in. I feel it's one of those stories that the vast majority of comic book readers will have at least heard of. Even if you've never read this, chances are you've at least heard of V for Vendetta at some point. And it was something that I kind of put off reading for quite a while. And I'll be honest, a reason for that was the artwork. Like I say, David Lloyd's artwork is not something that to me is immediately appealing and easy on the eye like a lot of artists' works are. But eventually when I did finally get around to reading this some time ago, I just thought, it's a classic story. It's got to be a classic story for a reason. And I'm glad I did finally give it a go because, yeah, like I say, the artwork might not be some of the best you've ever seen, although I'm sure some would agree with me on that. There will be people who are big fans of this. That probably goes without saying, art being subjective as it is. But I don't love the artwork in here, but I did think that it complemented the story very well, and I often think that that is really a key component of a comic. If you get a writing style and an art style that kind of mesh together, work well together, it's such a big factor in making a comic book an enjoyable read, and I do think that that is the case with this story. And even though V for Vendetta is not one of my very favourite ever comic book reads, I do think that it is a great book and something that I definitely would recommend that people read. It has a pretty iconic story. I think that Moore's writing is overall very good in here. And it does have a pretty satisfying ending as well. Quite a few extras in the back of the collection as well here. A few different bits of, well, a few different things collected. There's quite a bit of sort of an interview with Alan Moore, where he gives a bit of an in-depth discussion of the story. Some cool bits of artwork here from David Lloyd. And this deluxe edition is something that I think is worth checking out. I think that there are other ways to collect it, trade paperbacks that are available of this as well, so you wouldn't necessarily have to go for this format if you didn't want to. But very cool. Nice poster here at the back as well. Very, very striking image there of V. Like I say, not really a book that that I absolutely love. So I've not gone into as much depth with this discussion as perhaps I have with stories that I enjoy more than this one. But Alan Moore, more than this one. Yeah, I did think this was a good book, and I do think it's something that's worth reading. But I would definitely be interested to hear in what other people's thoughts are of this. When it comes to the works of Alan Moore, I think there are other things I've enjoyed more than this. Watchmen, probably being the best. I think that that's almost an obvious thing to say. A lot of people are always going to say that Watchmen is the best of Alan Moore's works, but I do genuinely think that probably is the case, and Watchmen is something I've yet to get around to reviewing on this channel, but at some point I will do so and have a discussion on that book, and let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, and I can get to looking at that sooner rather than later. But as always, thanks for watching this. I hope that this has been a bit of a useful overview and a fairly brief discussion on this book for anybody who's perhaps been on the fence as to whether or not to pick up this edition or not. Let me know your thoughts as always. As I say, definitely interested to hear what people think of V for Vendetta. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll be back again soon to discuss something else.